Hey guys, this is JJ with Express Workshops, and today this tutorial is going to be kind of a weirdo one where I'm going to be doing some photo retouching, but I'm really not going to go into a really deep photo retouch on here. In other words, I'm not going to go in and make sure that every little blemish and every little problem with the photograph is going to be retouched. More what I'm interested in is tell you a little story. I went on vacation, and this place that we went, Mexico, we could not bring a tripod. So basically I had to do what just about any photographer fears, is I had to hand my camera to someone else. Now I set up all the settings and I basically framed up things the way that I wanted, but knowing that this person really didn't know exactly what I wanted, nor were they a photographer, I'm going to get mixed results. So I went into it knowing that I was going to have to do some things to this photograph to make it a little bit better, where if I'd shot it myself from the beginning, I probably would be a little better off. So anyway, along the way here in this tutorial, I want you to look at some of the techniques that I use and learn from those. Again, this is not going to be a full-on retouch. It's just going to be, this is my vacation picture, and I want to be able to make that picture look the best that it can. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And what you see here is, this is the raw photograph. And again, when I handed my camera to this individual who was just another person standing around, another tourist like ourselves, I knew that I wanted to get the most information that I could out of that photograph. So I did shoot it with camera raw. So when I open up a photograph that's a raw image, then it's going to open in camera raw. So actually in here, I'm not going to do very much. I'm just going to show you that what I want to do is, if you're in camera raw and you make some adjustments, or you just bring it straight in, it's going to create a JPEG and throw that into Photoshop for you. Well, I want to be able to take advantage of camera raw, but I want to take advantage of camera raw inside of Photoshop. So what I'm going to do, instead of just pushing open image here, I'm going to hold the shift, and when I hold shift, you can see that it turns to open object. So I'm going to change this to a smart object and drop that into Photoshop. So now you can see over here that now it has a little smart object image there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, on this area over here, not on the image itself, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to New Smart Object via Copy, because I want to make another copy of this smart object that I have here. All right, and I'm going to show you why I'm going to do that. I can go back into camera raw, make adjustments, those adjustments on the original negative, and I have a lot more latitude, lights and darks and all of the shades in between in camera raw than I have with just a flattened JPEG inside of Photoshop. So when I go back in to this camera raw, all I have to do is click on the smart object, double click there. That's going to throw me right back into camera raw. And really what I want to adjust in here is, every time you go to Mexico, it seems to me that the skies are just phenomenal. Now, this was a weird case. Like I said, the person had to get this pyramid in the background and this the sky there, and then us on the ground. We're a little bit in shadow. So I can kind of cheat it a little bit and make sure that I get a little more color, a little more definition out of here. And I'm just going to do that by going to the exposure. Now, I'm not going to pay too much attention to the rest of the photograph except for the sky, because the whole purpose of this is I want to be able to paint in the sky on top of it. And I'll show you what I mean when I get back. So I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, that's pretty good. I also might just go in here and throw the saturation up on it, because I really like saturated images. A lot of people kind of fight me with that, but I like it. It's my image. I do what I want. Okay, so as you can see that it's throwing my wife and I here, it's throwing us into shadow. I don't care about that. This ruin here is going into shadow, but the sky is a deep color that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to say okay. And when I get back in Photoshop, you can see that it's made that change on this top layer. Now, the layer underneath is still the original image. So what I want to do is I want to apply a layer mask on here, and if I go down here, it says I can add layer mask to that top copy. Now, there's been no change because it's a white mask on this layer. Now, if I invert that by going Control I, then you can see I'm looking at really the image underneath. But what I want to do is I want to be able to paint in that sky that I had. So on my mask here that is completely black, if I paint with white, I'm going to make a soft brush on that mask, you can see I can bring in that sky, that beautiful brilliant sky that I wanted to capture. And I'm not going to be extremely crazy about getting all this perfect. We're just doing it for a tutorial so that you can see what is possible. But I am going to get as close as I can. What the heck, right? It's just a long video. So I'm going to get in here, and all I'm doing is painting with white on this black mask, which is going to go ahead and get this whole background. I'm making it a little bit bigger now. Gonna get that painted in. And I'll get that part right there. Okay. All right. I think I got all of it. I'm gonna call that good. So if I were to turn that off and on, you can see the difference that I brought that sky out. And all I did was just paint on it. All right, so really as far as my smart objects have gone, I've done pretty much what I really want to do with the smart objects. You know, I may have a little bit of haloing around here. See, I'm going to get critical. I didn't say I was wanting to, but that's how it is. Okay, good enough, good enough. So what I want to do is basically make a copy of the result of this image here. Now I got a couple ways that I can do it. Now I like to retain all the layers that I can. So what I want to do is I'm going to choose Control, Shift, Alt, and E. And that's going to give me this copy of everything underneath it on one flat layer. All right. So the next thing that I want to go ahead and take a look at is I'm going to work on a little bit of contrast. You can see here that it kind of threw us into a weird low contrast area here. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to use an adjustment layer, and I'm going to use a curves adjustment layer. Now I went on and chose that adjustment layer, and this little icon right here that has a little finger with the scrubby, it says click and drag to modify it. The way that I use it is I go in and I pick a area that's dark, well, like my face in this instance, and I want to lighten that up. Okay, now with the same thing, I'll find something dark like my wife's hair here, and I'll pull that part down. And if there's white light or something light like my t-shirt there, I'll bring that up a little bit. So that gives me a little bit of contrast on us, kind of puts us in the picture rather than having all the other things. And as you can see, everything else in the picture kind of went white. I lost my sky again. But when I go back to my layers palette, you can see that there was put a layer mask in there. So I can invert that layer mask again by Control I, and that goes back to where I want it. And again, I can go in and paint directly on that layer mask on my face and my body. And get that kind of haze, that kind of non-contrast area put back in. So basically all I'm doing is I'm going in, I'm making these areas. I can isolate these areas using these adjustment layers, and then I create a layer mask and go ahead and paint in the areas that I want to deal with. All right, and so it looks like that's going to be good enough. All right, so there we go. We have another layer on there. Let's look at the contrast, the difference here. I'll look at the little eyeball here. That's without it, that's with it. It throws a little bit of contrast on it. All right, so let's move ahead. So the next thing that I want to do is I see this shape in the background here, this pyramid, this Mexican ruin. I want to bring some of that same contrast that I have in there, but I want to adjust it separately. So I can go back and choose another curves adjustment layer. Same tool, little scrubby. I'm going to find a dark area and I'm going to bring that down, and I'll get a light area like here and I'll bring that up. All right, same thing as I did before. Go back to my layer palette and reverse it, paint on it with black, or paint on the black adjustment or layer mask. I got the right word now. Layer mask with white, and that brings in all of the contrast in the stones there. Now, as you can see, all the time that I'm doing this, I'm not making any complete crazy outline mask. I'm not masking off one section and not masking off another. I'm just going in and painting it naturally. I am using a Cintiq tablet though, so that makes it a little bit easier. Anytime you can use a tablet, get one, because it's going to definitely help you out. Okay, so that part is taken care of. As you can see, I'm just going in systematically, changing and adjusting the photograph as I need it. All right, so the next one, I probably want to go into the sky, maybe give it a little more, just a little boost of hue saturation. Now, I'm not going to go crazy. I do understand sometimes I get crazy with color, but I do love color. So I'm going to go ahead. Now, I'm going to ignore that this color is becoming too much because I'm not going to paint on us. I'm going to paint on the sky. So I've made my adjustment. Go back to layers, and I'm going to invert the layer mask, and then I'm going to go back to the sky and see that blue. I can get that blue going in there. That's what I really wanted. And sometimes it's just in the darkest areas that you're going to see that saturation, but that's what I want. And again, this is not a photo retouch for a magazine. This is a photo retouch because I went on vacation and I wanted to get a nice picture, but the place that I went to wouldn't allow for a tripod, so I had to really depend on somebody else for making my vacation portrait, which is, if you're a photographer, you know how sad that can be sometimes. All right, moving right along, I want to, let's see, what else can we do with this picture? Anything that sticks out at me? I think I'm good as far as, you know, I could probably even use a little of that hue saturation there, bring up some of this grass. I mean, it's all right. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and undo that. I want to make that grass a little greener. So that'll help out on a technique here too. So instead of using the hue saturation the same way I have for the sky, I'm going to go into I'm going to make a curve adjustment layer, and I'm going to go to the RGB and I'll go to green. So that's exactly what I'm looking for, is anything that's green. I can use my little scrubby, get down here where the green is, and bring that color up. And as you can see, it turned everything green. Again, I don't care. Get back on my layers, invert my mask, and then paint directly on that area, and it'll bring out the green and the grass instead of that brown kind of yellow look. And again, this is all taste. You know, I love color, so it's one of those things that I will probably do. You can see that some of these trees over here are getting a little, they were a little desaturated, and over here on this side, and we can bring some of that green back in there too. Okay, so let's kind of look at where we were and where we're at now. There's the before, and that's where we are now. That's a pretty good change. Not bad for somebody taking a picture for you on your vacation. Okay, one more step that I'd like to address, and you know, I don't mind that there's people in the background, but some of these people are kind of distracting, so I'm going to take some of those folks out. I want to leave some in because I want to be able to show the scale of this ruin here. So again, I'm going to go and do Control Alt Shift E, and I will bring everything to the top. As you can see, now it's just one layer. And the reason I did that is because now I want to be able to use my patch tool, and it won't work on a adjustment layer. It needs to be a flattened layer. So I'll go to my patch tool over here, and I'll zoom in a little bit here and get my patch tool. And like this guy and this lady, this guy and this umbrella especially are kind of sticking out. So I get as close as I can to the object that I want to get rid of, and then I click and I just move it over. That took care of that. And this lady, the same thing. And actually I'm going to get this guy in there with her. Alright, I'll move that back this way. And that takes care of them. And then this situation with this bright umbrella, I want to get rid of. It's just kind of distracting. So, got that taken care of. Alright, so again, that's going to be far away. No one's ever going to know that it was even there, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. So I'm going to look around. The only other thing I see is over here, this guy's body is half on and half off the picture. And if I use the patch tool with that, I'm probably going to run into problems. So it's going to probably, and I'll show you what I mean. If I go in here and I do that, and then I pull it over, see that little haze in there? I don't want that. So that's probably not going to work for me. It's not going to be the best tool. So I will go to the clone stamp tool and just simply go in and set my clone there and just paint that in. It's just all trees and objects over here, so that won't make a deal. All right, so I've got that taken care of. One last thing that I want to do, I keep doing more and more and more with it, is I'm just going to create a blank layer, and I'm going to fill that layer with black. You know what? I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to show you a different technique. Instead of doing that, I'm going to get rid of that layer. I'm going to go up here to an exposure adjustment layer. All right? And then I'm just going to kind of watch the edges here. I'm going to let those darken up a little bit. And go back to my layers palette. And then I'm going to choose the ellipse tool. And I'm going to pick an area here about like that, and I'm using my space bar to move around. If you use your space bar, you can move that around and move your mask exactly where you want it. Alright, so that's a good one. And then I'm going to go to refine edge, and I'm going to feather that out quite a bit like that. I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to push delete on the keyboard and Control D to deselect, and then I'm just going to use the opacity here on that layer, and that's off completely, and I just want to throw in a little bit of vignette on there. This is with, that's without. Just a subtle amount that just kind of draws your eyes down. Okay, that was my retouch. And again, like I said, this was just a simple, oh, someone took a picture of me on my vacation, and I don't want to go into a big crazy retouch. I just want to be able to get a nice photograph documenting where we are. All right. Thanks for watching my tutorial, and again, look for another one next week. If there's anything that you'd like me to do a tutorial on, just let me know, and I will get on that, and I will see you next week. Thanks a lot for watching.